And I hired this person. If it doesn't work out, that's a reflection of me. The truth is, that's true. It's the old adage of not throwing good money after bad. The wrong hire will set you back anywhere from 6 to 18 months. And all the while, for sure, it has an impact on the organization's ability to build and maintain momentum.
Most CEOs only call for help once the frustration has set in. Growth has stalled, alignment is fraying, and the same problems keep resurfacing in new packaging. Patrick Lyons has built his career stepping into those moments and showing leaders that what looks like a strategy or execution problem is almost always a people and culture decision playing out on a lag. Patrick is the founder of the Lyons Group, where he works with CEOs, especially in closely held and family businesses, to reignite growth, restore alignment, and create culture by design, not by default. As the host of the Frustrated CEO podcast, he spent countless hours in the trenches with leaders who are realizing that their org chart, leadership bench, and culture are quietly capping their enterprise value. In this episode, we unpack the people decisions that CEOs delay the longest, how great on paper hires become invisible constraints on valuation, and what surfaces in due diligence when culture has been treated as an afterthought instead of a core part of the growth strategy. Welcome to People Multiple. I am Gia Ganesh. Here we unpack how talent decisions act as leading indicators of enterprise value, shaping whether companies scale with strength or stall under pressure. Let's dive in. Hi, Patrick. Welcome to the People Multiple show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Patrick, I understand you're just coming back from a business retreat in Arizona last week. You're back home in Oregon. Tell us what the retreat was about and introduce yourself so people have some context to your retreat as well.
I will. Thank you. My name is Patrick Lyons. I am the founder of the Lyons Group Consulting. We are a consulting agency. We work with businesses on scaling and growing, if I just at its minimum. 4 years ago, my best friend, a gentleman I went to college with, had this idea of doing a business retreat that was different from anything else in the industry. He does marketing in the pet daycare industry. So he works with a lot of pet, doggy daycare businesses. And he wanted to do something different from any other event in the pet daycare space. And it was a retreat where the owners would go to an amazing house with an amazing pool in amazing weather and get to network, stay on site in the house. And it would be 3 days of working on the business, but also working on the mind and the body. So having opportunities to get out and walk and just slow the chaos down of running a business, just to quiet the mind, to network with each other, share ideas and best practices, learn from us. So we bring the content, have amazing food, and time to relax and just focus on the business instead of in the business. And this is now this one we just completed was our third annual. And everybody who was there said they immediately want to come back next year. They want to sign up for next year. And it just has grown. It's been, I think we've realized the vision that we had, but we also know there's a lot more we can do to make it even better.
That sounds like an amazing retreat to be at, Patrick.
It was fun.
Fun. Funnily enough, I was at a conference last week in LA, and the conference was in a similar setup like what you just described. It was a mansion in Bel Air with the pool overlooking the entire view of the city and a nice, cozy set of people. We, of course, we're not working on the business as such, but we were working on, the industry that I belong to, which is the people industry. But it sounds like you and I have been part of retreats and coming back with a whole bunch of ideas and, a whole high energy from being around people as well. So I am glad to catch you right at the onset of this back from the conference or retreat momentum that you've had.
Perfect timing.
Yes, yes. I want to jump into a few things here that we always explore here at the People Multiple.
Okay.
You've spent years, working as a thought partner to CEOs, which is the crux of your business. And when something in the business isn't working the way it should, you've been asked to step into that situation and help the CEO and the business figure out what's going wrong. So, my question to you is, what have you seen as the people decision that most often is sitting at the root of the problem after you diagnose it?
One word: misalignment. It's the issue that we encounter more than anything else, and it so often gets mistaken as a talent problem or a strategy problem, an execution problem. It's misalignment. It's when the leadership team, the executive team, is not on the same page and pulling in the same direction. It so often comes down to the same thing. You have really smart people in the business. They know what they want to accomplish. They may have different ideas about how to accomplish it, but that lack of alignment just grinds everything to a screeching halt. A crack at the top of the org chart becomes a chasm at the bottom of the org chart. Something as simple as we should disagree and debate an idea behind closed doors. We should, and that way we don't get groupthink and we don't miss the obvious. But when the door opens, nobody out there should know who agreed or disagreed in here. That's one of the easiest ways for misalignment to appear, for alignment to crack. And there are more. And so very often we're working to help an organization define and commit to the behaviors of alignment, because, again, nothing derails a strategy faster than misalignment.
When you peel back the layers to see what the alignment issues are, do you often come across that being a people decision, a people situation, or is it just pure alignment issues?
Well, to me, I see that as a people issue. To me, misalignment or misalignment is always a people issue. You can have you can have all the right people in the right seats on the bus and still have misalignment. But sometimes an organization can outgrow its team, its current team. Like it's the old "what got you here won't get you there."
Yes.
And sometimes the way you solve that misalignment is by needing to turn over members of the team.
I'm curious, Patrick, obviously when you get that call from the CEO saying, hey, something is wrong with my business, come and help me, Patrick. What do you see as the first sign, and how do you peel back the layers to arrive at that issue, which is an alignment problem or the right person not being in the right seat or not aligned to the right stage of the company? Walk us through what that looks like from your lens.
Yeah, there are a few signs. Sometimes the sign can show up as a culture problem, like a lack of accountability. We spend quite a bit of time trying to address what a founder or an owner or leadership team thinks is a lack of accountability in the organization. So that is often a catalyst for somebody to reach out and ask for help. We do a lot with family businesses. We have traditional non-family businesses as well, but in the family business, that misalignment not only shows up 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, but it shows up at Thanksgiving. It shows up. It shows up at Christmas. You start to see, the family relationships break down. To me, those are the most meaningful ones. The most meaningful story. Probably the stories I'll share at the end of my career are the ones where not only we fixed the business, but in the process we restored a father and a son, or a husband and a wife, or siblings in the process. And along the way, very often the founder, the owner, starts to think, I have a people problem, where this person shouldn't be in the business, or this person is in the wrong seat. And again, I come back to, you've got really smart people that you all want to win. You may have, again, different ideas of what it looks like and how you get there. So often it does come down to getting in a room, creating the kind of environment where whatever needs to be said can safely be said without worrying about punishment or retribution. And getting people to put the weapons down and come to the middle and remember that they're on the same team. That's another way to think about alignment.
It's interesting, Patrick. It seems like you're in the business of saving family relationships, not in the business of saving businesses,
I'd say yes. But the catalyst is always, hey, can you come in and help us run this business?
Yes.
But here's what we've learned, and this is true whether it's a family business or a non-family traditional business. When mom and dad are fighting, the kids choose sides. Even when we don't want them to, they choose sides. So that is especially true in a family business, that when you have, it may not be mom and dad, it might be brother and sister, it might be sister and sister, it might be a parent and a child. But when there is unresolved conflict, when they are misaligned and pulling in different directions, time after time, you see the organization, the kids, the employees, choose sides, and it becomes team dad and team daughter, or team husband, team wife. But the same is true in a traditional business. You don't have to have a blood relationship. When two executives, when two leaders are at odds with each other, the kids, the employees, choose sides. And very often, most of the time, they choose sides that align with their functional leader, but not always. Not always. And that's why I say that alignment piece, when a leadership team, or again, whether it's a family unit in a business or a traditional, when they are pulling in different directions. So our margins are shrinking. We are falling behind falling behind the competition. We've got waning customer scores. That's how it manifests itself. But at the root of it are people issues, because smart people know how to fix those issues. They just can't get out of their own way.
Yes. We all get there sometimes. Patrick, I'm curious, what is, in your experience of working with so many CEOs, what is a people decision that you see that CEOs should be making, but they, for some reason, are unable to make it, or refuse to make it, or delay making a decision, but it's a people-related decision? Curious, have you seen anything like that, and what that could be?
I think the biggest mistake, and every CEO knows this, and yet we all fall into the trap, and that is, this goes back to accountability. The mistake is not holding to the standards the standards in the organization, or the expectations for performance and behavior. So every leader has expectations for every role in the company, and not just the technical and functional aspects of the job, but performance. Behavior, how I show up. I'm expected to play nice with others. I'm expected to communicate openly and transparently, to not play politics in the organization. Every leader knows that on a high-performing team, you have clear expectations, clear standards, and people hold themselves accountable to meet those expectations. When that doesn't happen, when I choose not to hold myself accountable to the expectation, very, very often, way more often than it should, a leader lowers the expectation down to meet my level of performance. You might have a couple of conversations, but if you don't see improvement, you kind of give up. You find yourself saying, well, that's the best we're going to get out of that person, so we'll just deal with it. The problem is, what I'm no longer now expected to do, first of all, that's great for me, because now my lower level of performance is now acceptable. You've lowered the expectations down to meet me where I am. I'm now performing okay. And that work that I wasn't doing, or that I'm not doing, has to go somewhere. So the leader either usually takes it on themselves, like, you're now stepping into my job and doing my job, or what happens more often is we give it to people that we can count on. And that's usually our high performers. We've all been in that situation where a leader has come to us and said, Gia, I know this isn't your job, but can you just do this? Please, can you just take care of this? So-and-so is falling behind, or right. And you're like, sure, because you want to be helpful and you're a high performer, but you know it's not your work. And you're being punished for being a high performer by now having to do somebody else's work. And in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I kind of wish everybody here would just hold themselves accountable to do the work, right? And so that to me is the mistake that CEOs make, is they lower the expectations instead of having those conversations and holding the line and expecting people to raise their performance up to that line.
That's what you said is so right, in the sense that becomes the invisible tax for the high performers, right? You're a high performer and the reward you get is more work taking on somebody else's work, which doesn't feel fair.
And you know what happens? You're exactly. And so then your high performers are working harder than than the others. And they're the ones who leave. There's a point where they say, this is dumb. I'm not only doing my job, I'm doing other people's work. I want to go someplace where I want to go work with other high performers. So as the leader, you end up with an organization of mediocre to mid performers. That's it. It should be the other way around. You, the leader, have to hold to your expectations, and I have to hold myself accountable to meet them. It's flipping the accountability conversation. You can't hold me accountable. I have to hold myself accountable, but you have to hold to the expectations. Otherwise, you let me off the hook.
I'm curious. So how do you help leaders raise the bar on accountability, right? It's easier said than done. We all want to hold people accountable, but for whatever reason, CEOs and other leaders struggle with holding people accountable. What's the magic formula in which all of us can get better at holding people accountable?
Well, honestly, the first thing we do is we encourage people to stop saying we have to hold people accountable. Because you can't hold me accountable. No one can hold me accountable. Only I can hold myself accountable. My accountability rests with me. And if you look at every high-performing team out there, they have clear expectations that have been set by a CEO or a leadership team. But on a high-performing team, the team members hold themselves accountable. That's where accountability lies for every employee.
So true.
And I still fall into the trap sometimes of saying, we need to hold people accountable. And then I catch myself now and say, I can't hold you accountable. What I have to do, I have to be clear on the expectations, and I have to be clear with you on what success looks like, what those standards might be, what the expectations are. I have to hold to that standard. I can't throw my hands up and say, well, I guess that's all I'm going to get from Gia. I just have to accept I'll take what I can get, because the minute I do that, I'm now lowering the standards, and we're back to that low performer issue.
Yes.
But so I am accountable for setting expectations, communicating those expectations, and then, just as importantly, sitting down with you and having the conversation whenever you're not holding yourself accountable to those expectations. The conversation might look like, Gia, what can I do to help? Are there obstacles in the way that are keeping you from meeting the expectations? Is it training? Is it development? Can I help you with reprioritizing work, right? That's where, as a leader, accountability isn't a hammer. It's a contract. It's a conversation. But once that's done, I've done my part. Now I can expect that you will hold yourself accountable. So that's really one of the first things we do on the path of building a more accountable organization is teaching leaders to stop saying, I'm going to hold you accountable. Like you can't. You have to hold the standards, hold the line, and then communicate to people they have to hold themselves accountable. That shifts the accountability back where it belongs.
Yeah. I love that. A great formula you've given us here. Accountability rests with the individual, not with the leader.
That's it.
And the leader cannot hold the person accountable. All the leader can do is set clear expectations and hold to the standard. Love that. Easy to remember as well. I want to flip to the other side, right? We talked about leaders holding employees accountable and team members accountable. Let's talk about the leadership team itself, right? Sometimes great on paper leadership quietly becomes a constraint on the business, right? And how long does it typically take CEOs to realize that this person is not actually creating value, but they're taking away from the value of the business? And how do they come to the realization, or do you have to step in and help them realize?
I think leaders who are attuned, they sense it sooner than they probably act. When it comes to, a leader who looks great on paper that ultimately turns out to not be a fit, again, I go back to, they don't fail loudly, but they misalign quietly. So you start to see it as they either interpret the strategy differently than the rest of the leadership team and they start pulling in their own direction. They might rely on a past playbook that just doesn't fit this company or the current stage of growth that the organization's in. Their behaviors subtly, I'm actually working through this with a client right now where a leader looked great on paper. I'm actually, this is a real life example, great on paper. Okay. And frankly, that this leader is a great person, a very good person. It's not like they're a bad person. But when they were brought in, the circumstances in the business changed pretty quickly. And what they were brought in to do, they were no longer allowed to do, or it didn't work. And it is showing up in that executive team alignment. It is showing up culturally, because the team jumped on board with the new leader when they first showed up. They were excited and enthusiastic, and as the situation quickly changed, I think in some cases the people lost hope. Some cases the leader lost hope, and even a great leader, a great employee will struggle in the wrong environment. We're all that way. Even high performers. Again, you get brought in to do a job, and that job changes very quickly. That can create some disappointment and resentment and frustration. And so, but I think it was seen, to answer your question, it was known pretty early. It's just played out over the course of about 18 months to the point where now it's being addressed, I think, by everybody involved.
18 months. I have no idea what the context of the business is, but 18 months sounds like a significant amount of time that impacts the growth of the company. Does it show up in the growth of the company or in the
absolutely
valuation of the company? Tell
absolutely.
us more.
Absolutely. I'm in my experience, and someone else may say differently. My experience is the wrong hire will set you back anywhere from 6 to 18 months. And the length of time depends on very often how high, is this a really high level visible position versus a frontline position that perhaps doesn't have as much of an impact on the larger business. It can be very costly. Again, the higher up you go, some of those, they're more employment contracts than a job offer. And it can take a while for these things to play out. It can take a while for it to begin to show up and then to begin to try to course correct and address it. And all the while, for sure, it has an impact on the organization's ability to build and maintain momentum. Actually, this was the theme of the conference we did, the retreat we did last week, was momentum, right? You need 3 things for momentum. You need a clear direction. You need energy, right? And energy can come from within. It's like, what do I bring to the table? And energy can come from without, comes from the culture. Is this a culture that generates buzz and energy, or is this a culture that sucks the life out of me or sucks the life out of us? And then the last thing you need for momentum is execution. Well, if you have a leadership team that is misaligned, your direction becomes fuzzy. Your direction becomes unclear. If you have a leadership team that is misaligned, one particular leader not able to get on the same page with the executive team, that impacts the energy. It impacts the leader's energy, and it begins to impact the energy of the culture. And so now you're already down 2 of the 3 elements of momentum. You might be able to execute, but without a clear direction, you don't know if you're executing in the right way, in the right direction. And without energy, everybody burns out. Feels crappy to work here.
So I'm curious then, Patrick, if it takes, let's say, 6 to 12 to 18 months, or rather the business is set back by 6 to 12 to 18 months, why does the leadership team or the CEO not act sooner? Is it because they didn't know? Or is it because they're afraid to take action? Or is it because one bird on hand is better than 2 in the bush kind of situation? Why does it take long for people to take action against the wrong people decision that's impacting the team?
Gia, that's a great question. And literally in a conversation I had this morning with a different leader, you said that it's the devil I know versus the right. I literally we were working through a people issue, someone who's been there for almost a decade, and it just continues to be an issue, a performance issue, and talking about what would it take to address that, because you cannot build a high performance team with the wrong people in the right seats. So you have to be willing, you have to be ready and willing, as hard as those decisions are, you have to be ready and willing to make the tough decisions. We were talking about that, and this leader said, yeah, but it'll take me a while. I don't want to make a move on that person until I have a backup lined up and ready to go. And first of all, I'm not a big fan of posting someone's job while somebody's in it. I just think that's a bad look. I think that erodes trust. I think that does way more harm than good on your culture, not just for the person whose job is posted, but is still doing it. But everybody in the organization feels like that's wrong. Even if they know that I don't belong there anymore, that still feels wrong. And it just impacts how the organization, how they see the business. So I'm not a fan of that, but I have seen more times than I can count when someone who is a cultural misfit, right, they're still great people. They're just, this is not the right job or the right company for you, or for, let's say for me. When I'm out of the way, the rest of the organization rallies because they again, as long as I was treated with respect but people know that I'm just not a good fit. When I'm out of the way, a vacuum desires to be filled. That's a law of nature. So when I'm out of the way, you'd be amazed at who rallies to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks for the good of the team. And it's, when the body is sick, when cancer is identified in the body, you want to get that out as quickly as possible so the rest of the body can begin to heal. And it's the same in an organization. So I think sometimes it's the fear of, well, if this position is open, what will that mean? I also think sometimes leaders hate to admit that they made a mistake.
Oh, yes.
Right. And I hired this person. If it doesn't work out, that's a reflection of me. The truth is that's true. That is true. It's the old adage of not throwing good money after bad. Like if you brought me in and it's pretty clear that I'm, for whatever reason, it looked good on paper, but it didn't play out, for the good of everybody involved, move on quickly. Just admit that it was a mistake. What do you learn from it so you don't repeat that mistake? But then the body needs to begin to heal. And the longer I'm in the role that I don't really fit, it begins to impact everything in the organization, especially in a leadership role. It really impacts the culture.
Very true. Very true. I'm curious, have you been in situations where you've helped organizations deal with mergers and acquisitions? And if so, how do people-related issues show up in that? Like, is there any due diligence conducted around people
Absolutely.
as part of the please tell us about that. Is that a factor at all, or is it all numbers, spreadsheets, and the bottom line?
I think in 2020, where we are right now in 2026, I think almost every VC or investor out there understands the importance of the people. Really, the people. I mean, it's never. I shouldn't say never. It's rarely just about the numbers, because the people are the biggest expense and they're the greatest risk to the investment that you are making. So to answer your question, yes, I've been on both sides. I've been on the side acquiring, and I have been on the side selling to an acquirer. If I can sum it up this way, an acquisition, what an acquisition does is it exposes what has been tolerated up to that point. So the deal doesn't create the problems, but the deal reveals the problems that are already there. Whether it's an executive leadership team on the same page or not on the same page, whether it's having strong leaders throughout the organization at that mid-level and all the way down to the front line, or whether it's inconsistencies, lack of accountability, lack of communication, lack of trust, those aren't created by an acquisition, but they do get exposed by it.
So I'm curious then, does that result in a lower valuation, lower multiple, or sometimes even in the deal not going through because
Absolutely.
of the people? Or is that always going back to the bottom line numbers?
Absolutely. No, I have seen prospective buyers walk away because through the due diligence process, they've identified issues in the culture that, again, it's just a massive risk, especially today. AI is disrupting everything.
Absolutely.
That you have to be even more diligent than ever. I also think you can afford today to walk away from a company with people issues, because there are more companies for sale than there are buyers. You just have more people getting out of business, like looking to sell or retire right off into the sunset, than there are people looking to buy them. So the buyers can be more discerning. They can be more. They can pass the one with people issues until they find the one that good financially sound and good people numbers as well.
But of course, it's not something that is, there's no formula for understanding the people aspect of a due diligence, right? It's more coming down to conversations and understanding their style, understanding how their leadership has shown up in terms of the execution and the revenue growth, right?
Absolutely. I would say this, so anybody who's listening who is thinking about purchasing a company, you've got a team of people who are helping you understand and evaluate the numbers, right? That's just good due diligence. There is tremendous value in having a partner who can help you determine, diagnose, assess, understand the people numbers. And there are numbers that you can generate. There are numbers you can gather and collect that give you a picture of the people soundness, just like you'd be looking at the financial soundness of your investment. So that's something that we do. We've got relationships with venture capitalists and with investors who, whenever they're thinking about purchasing a company, they give us a call. So I would say wherever you are, there are people who do this. Like, reach out, find somebody who can support you in that, because you're talking about a lot of money. I'd hate to make a mistake, and you don't want to sign the deal and then find out that you have a whole people overhaul that awaits. It's a big it's a big undertaking.
Yeah, I'm curious, Patrick. So you said there are people that can help you understand the people soundness of the business, and they can, even give you numbers. Is there an example of the kind of metric that people can give you when they come and assess the people team?
Yeah. So I'll speak from I have my own, I have my own podcast. You mentioned that. I'm always so careful not to ever sound like an infomercial, because the minute I hear that, I turn it off. I'll just say, I just say, so this is not an infomercial. I'll just say this. What we do is we've got a culture survey that we would run to be, and it's not, are people happy? It's looking at the very specific business drivers that impact culture. Culture is one of those, like, we think it's this fluffy thing, this ethereal, intangible thing, but it's often, we describe it as how it feels to work here. It's the best way to understand culture, is how it feels to work here. But that doesn't mean that because it's how it feels, it doesn't mean it's intangible and ethereal. There are very specific business drivers. There are levers that you can pull in the organization to impact how it feels to work here. For example, how clear is the vision? Does everybody understand where we're going, why we need to go there, and how I fit into that vision? Because if I don't know where we're going, or I don't understand why we're going there, why we're doing what we're doing, or how I fit into the picture, that impacts how it feels to work here for me, right? I don't feel connected to the business. I don't feel any connection to the 3 to 5 year strategy. So I'm much more likely to leave. To me, then this becomes, instead of a mission or a purpose, this is a job, and I can find another job that I'm more likely to leave for more money, sometimes even the same amount of money, if I'm not connected, if I don't understand the vision. So that's just one example. That's something that a company, a CEO can lean hard on, is being clear and compelling with a vision that impacts the culture. It has nothing to do with putting snacks in the break room or giving people unlimited PTO. So that's one example of several different business levers that an owner can pull. When we work with an investor, we measure how effectively the organization is pulling those levers today. So it gives you a sense of what you're buying, what you're walking into, how sustainable the infrastructure is once the owner's gone. Are we all connected to a vision, or are we connected to this owner? They're fun and I love them, and because when the owner's gone, if I'm connected to the owner, I'm more likely to leave, right? That impacts how it feels to work here. But if I was connected to the mission, the vision, the purpose of the company, and I know how I fit into it, then when the owner leaves, that doesn't change, right? I'm sad, but the new person coming in is carrying that on. I'm more connected to the business than I am the business owner. Again, just one example. So there are, that's one example of things we measure to help an investor understand what they're getting and what they're walking into.
Love that, Patrick. Moving us into the second last section here, which is the rapid fire section, Patrick. The first question is, what is the easiest people decision that CEOs consistently get wrong that has an outsized impact on the valuation of the organization?
Oh, this is an easy one. It might be the easiest question all day.
Okay.
The mistake is they forget to measure performance. This best practice is that you measure my performance 50% what I do and 50% how I do it. The mistake that leaders make is they put up with crappy behavior because somebody's getting results. We see it all the time where your top salesperson just leaves a trail of chaos in the organization because they know they're the top salesperson and they feel like they can behave however they want. That is costing your organization more than it's gaining you. And we put up with it because we forget that the how is just as important as the what. So if I'm your top salesperson, that might be 100 over here. But if I'm a complete jerk, that's a 0 over here, and 100 and a 0 average out to a 50. When I went to school, that's an F. And you're better off finding somebody who is, who among the leaders in both the what and the how.
It's funny you mentioned that because we use that exact framework for our performance evaluations. We have the what and the how, as we call it, and everybody is measured on what and the how. And I love the simple math formula you gave us, which is 100,
It's very
average
simple.
of 100 and 0 is 50,
It's,
right?
what's interesting too is the opposite is also just as much of a problem.
Yes.
So when the first example of the person who is just a jerk, but they get results, we call that the high performing jerk or the high performing a-hole, right? Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite is just as much of a problem when you have somebody who is really struggling at the job, but they're just so nice. And we call them the company mascot, right? You've got the high performing a-hole over here and you've got the company mascot over here, but they're both problematic for the organization. Like,
Yes.
okay, I will high five that person. I love to see them. They're great. They have a lot of stories and history, but please don't put them on my team because I'm going to have to work a whole lot harder because I can't count on them and they don't hold themselves accountable. So that same measurement, 100% on the how, but a 0 on the what, that's still an F. They both have to be resolved.
Moving on to the next question, culture by design or culture by default, and what do you see more often? We all know the right answer, but what do you see more often?
Yes.
And what is the impact on a 3 to 5 year horizon for the company?
Yes, yes, it should be culture by design, and way more often we see culture by default. And I think of it that's actually good for business for us because that means there's somebody who needs our help. The impact on the business is let's talk specifically about the 3 to 5 year strategy. It's funny because I think you see the impact on the 3 to 5 year plan more than you see the impact on the day to day. And here's why. Because in a culture by default where you're not intentionally building a high performing team, you know this, whether you are by design or by default, you still have a culture. The question is, are you driving intentionally to build the one you want, or do you just go where it goes and you get what you get? On a high performing team, people go above and beyond, right? There's engagement and people are willing to go above and beyond. In a culture that is not high performance, you get it's whether you want to call it the quiet quitting but people do the minimum to keep their job without getting in trouble. Everything that doesn't necessarily impact the day to day. It might a little bit here and there. The things that are in a good 3 to 5 year plan are over and above what you do day to day, right? It doesn't have day to day stuff in there. It has those long-term initiatives. It has your North Star. It has where we need to go to stay competitive with the trends and to respond to competition. So a good strategic plan is over and above the day-to-day. A culture by default, people don't do over and above. So you may not see it show up in day-to-day operations, but you will find it really, really hard to execute the over and above initiatives in your strategic plan. A high-performing team is so much more interested and excited about being part of those long-range initiatives.
Last rapid-fire question, Patrick. Yes. What's one people decision a CEO thinks they can delegate but absolutely shouldn't do so if they care about the long-term value of that decision?
Ownership of the culture. That's it. Ownership of the culture. All the research suggests that the single biggest impact on any organization culture is the senior leader. The biggest mistake I've seen when it comes to culture is CEOs, founders, owners, they delegate responsibility of the culture to HR or an HR type person in the organization. And when that happens, the rest of the business sees it as an HR initiative instead of an executive leadership team initiative. When it's an HR initiative, culture becomes a checkbox exercise. I just have to do this because HR is making me, and then I can get back to the real work. When the CEO owns the culture, it doesn't mean you have to do it. You can engage your leadership team in the process of building a culture by design. But you, the CEO, you have to be defining it. you have to be speaking it. You have to be living it. You have to be out there building it. If you delegate responsibility for the culture, it will show up. You'll never get a high performance team by delegating culture to HR or anybody else for that matter.
I love that one, really. Last question for the day today, Patrick, is our signature question, right? It's about people multiple, right? Where have you seen a people decision change the trajectory of the company, the stories investors maybe tell about that company, and how have you seen that played out in any, if you want to share it as an example or
Sure.
Yeah, that would be great.
10 years ago, I was hired by a service company that had 3 partners. The story that preceded me, a year before they hired me, the 2 owners of the business called 4 of their senior people into a room and said, we're selling the business to the 4 of you. It's either all 4 of you or none of you. So they all felt, 2 of them were very, very excited. And the other 2 felt like, I guess I should want this. I never thought about owning the company, but I guess it's a great opportunity. I should want this. And I don't want to, since it's all 4 of us or none of us, I don't want to let down the others. They seem excited. So all 4 purchased the company. And within the first year, one of them realized she didn't want this, and she got bought out. So by the time they contacted me, there were only 3. We worked together to build a strategic plan, that 3 to 5 year vision, to work on culture. And it was a lot of heavy lifting for the first probably 2 to 3 years because one of the 3 partners did not want to grow. She did not want to scale. She was already, she wanted family just as much as she wanted a business. Never really wanted to own a business. So the people decision, we ultimately arrived at the realization that she needed to go for herself and for the good of the business, because the other 2 owners had dreams of scaling, multiplying, growing the team, growing the customer base, growing the brand. When that partner left, she started her own solopreneur business. She is flourishing now 6 years later. And I know that because I still work with her. And the 2 owners who remained have grown an amazing business. And I know that because I still work with them. So it worked out great for me. The 1 business became 2, and I've gotten a chance to stay with and support them both. But that was a people decision that completely untethered them from the constraints that they were at. It would always have been a struggle to scale and grow to meet that 3 to 5 year vision, that 10-year, that 20-year vision, until they had the right leaders on the same page pulling in one direction.
That is a great example to end the show with, Patrick. Thank you so much for sharing all the examples and your live experience on a day-to-day basis on how people decisions are moving the multiples and the valuations and the performance of different organizations that you work for.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. It's great.
Thanks for listening to People Multiple. If you found today's conversation valuable, don't forget to give us a 5-star review and share it with a colleague or fellow investor. And don't forget to follow the show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media using the information on the screen and in the show notes below. This has been a production of the AGN Group. I am Gia Ganesh, and I'll see you next week as we continue to explore how talent shapes multiples.